Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm back with another Bible journaling process for you guys as we continue to work through By Invitation Only from ByTheWell4God. I did just double check and it appears there are still some kits left in the shop. So if you have not yet picked this one up, it is such a good study. I am thoroughly enjoying it. I really think this would be a good one to gift to people if you know somebody who maybe is a new believer or just has some questions, things like that. This covers the basis of the gospel. So this is a really, really good study to work through. So I am working in day 6 today, and I have been working through putting notes together, and that kind of thing. So day 6, Christ is necessary. I'm focusing in on Romans 3:23 through 24, which says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus." And so we are looking at this process of justification, redemption, propitiation. I got all of my notes from the Blue Letter Bible app. These are from the David Guzik commentary. So if you are wanting to do some more study for today's devotional day, you can head on over to Blue Letter Bible and find lots and lots of commentaries over there to take a look at. So I won't go too much into the study portion. I want to encourage you guys to do that. But looking at this key breakdown, I really liked how this was set up over there at Blue Letter Bible. It says, "For justification solves the problem of man's guilt before a righteous judge. Redemption solves the problem of man's slavery to sin, the world, and the devil. And then propitiation solves the problem of offending our Creator." And this is all through Christ's sacrifice. What he did on the cross for us covers us so that when God looks at us, he no longer sees our sin as Christians. He sees the blood of Christ. And that is because of the work of Christ. And so, this is one of those days that this is just kind of a foundational, really important day. I don't know. The whole devotional is really, really, really good, pointing out just topics like this and just theological things that I think are foundational to being a Christian, to being a believer. So we are going to be creating in my Interleave Bible. Since I'm already doing all of my notes in this extra traveler's notebook, I'm just doing prayer journaling here in my Bible. So working in my Interleave Bible, working in Romans 3:23 through 24, we are going to be, of course, doing a background. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like yet. We'll kind of have to see. I pulled out a few different pieces. This day of the devotional does have a journaling card from the kit that corresponds with it, with that verse. So of course I had to use that in there. This was a piece I think I had stamped for you guys in the unboxing video that I did. That video will be linked down below, as well as the other process video that I did for this kit. So I had stamped this just to kind of show you what it looked like, stamping on craft paper with colored ink. And so we are going to finish this up, kind of dress it up, and use this as a layering element. I have a few of the die cuts, some of the die cuts that I have created. If you're wondering what pieces and colors and things like that, I do have a what's in my cart video for this kit, so that will be linked down below as well. That's where you can find, I'll try to list them underneath this video too, but if you have questions about colors being used, or if you missed something, or a product being used, that what's in my cart video is everything that I compiled to use as I work through this kit, so that will be linked down below as well. I have one of these adorable little cards. These were coming in the freebie pack. When you order from ByTheWell4God, you always get freebies of some sort. So these little cards were in the freebie set, and this just kind of reminded me of, we're talking about Romans in Rome. I just felt like that kind of went with it. So we're going to use that. This tag I had actually created for Tiffany Solorio's Distress Crayon class that she did. I had prepped this for that class. All I did was use, which stencil is it? It's one of the new stencils from ByTheWell4God. And I just put some plain opaque matte texture paste threw that stencil onto a manila tag. That's all I did. I intended on coming back and putting distress crayons or something on this, but I didn't. So that has already been done off camera, and then I will be dressing this up with some color. I think we're going to try to use the watercolors from the kit to color this, as well as some other products. And this is going to be the tag that I do my prayer journaling on. Just gives me some extra space. I like that I can kind of create and go wild over here. And then I've got a little prayer tag. The other nice thing about doing it this way is, for me, where I do classes, I oftentimes take my Bible to those classes so people can go through it and look at it. And I mean, you guys all see stuff publicly, but sometimes I do little prayers that are a little bit more personal. And so having it on a separate piece like this, I could take these out if I wanted to, and then, you know, the public can go through my Bible and I don't have to worry about that. Of course, if you are just on your own, you're not doing classes and things like that, not so important to have those removable pieces, but it also just gives you some more real estate. So maybe you want to do your prayer writing over here, and then maybe you want to, you know, keep some of your notes or commentary or quotes or things like that. Having, you know, tags or extra cards, things like that, gives you some extra space to have those notes in your Bible, especially if you're working in a, you know, traditional Bible that doesn't have any extra margin space. You can always create on tags and cards and then stick those in there as well. So everything will be linked down below that I am using. I have lots of things off to my side here that we will be incorporating, creating ephemera pieces and doing the background and all kinds of fun things. So let me go ahead, put you guys on fast forward, and we'll put together this journaling entry for Romans 3:23 through 24. All right. Well, if I don't sound quite as peppy as I have, I'm fighting an infection. I do not feel well, but we're going to get through this. So I'm going to start out by spraying the background of this page with just some plain water. And then I'm going in with some antique linen. And then I think this is brushed corduroy. I kind of flipped between brushed corduroy and vintage photo throughout this entire process. So I can't remember what is what. I am not working on a prepped page. I am going in and adding a little bit of lost shadow stain that you saw there. So again, the page is not prepped, so there will be bleed through. If you don't want bleed through, then you need to prep your page. I would suggest with clear watercolor ground, or even white color watercolor ground would be fine, because that is just going to work a little bit better as a page prep for this technique. But moving on, I'm going to try this stencil stamping technique that I showed you guys last week. I pulled out some of the purple colors that coordinate with this kit, and unfortunately this did not work with this stencil. This is the lovely lace stencil that ByTheWell4God brought back. It's an older stencil, and as you can see here, it's just too intricate for this technique. You're just not able to see, you know, what the detail is on that stencil. So, you know, we win some, we lose some. We've learned some things. You need a not so detailed stencil if you want to do that stencil stamping with the spray stains. But I still like the effect that it gave on the background. I really love the little splashes of the purple coloring that's going to tie in the purples from the ephemera pieces. So it's all good. I'm not too worried about it. So here's this coffee rings stencil, and I'm putting out some, we're just going to say brown distress spray stain, a little bit of water, and then I'm working that color up into my paintbrush, and then I'm going to dab it through the stencil. I love stencils, but I hate the look of blended. Hate's a strong word. I extremely dislike blended ink through a stencil. I just don't, it's just not my jam. I don't like it. So this with the spray stains and the paintbrush, you saw me spritz a little bit of water on there. I'm going back in with a paintbrush and kind of detailing here. All of this is giving this stenciled area a more authentic look. It looks more like coffee rings that's kind of wicked out onto the paper. I just don't like blended ink through a stencil. I like this better. So I'm doing the same thing over here on the side with some little droplets, dabbing it through there, and it just gives me a rougher, more natural look. So made sure that was good and dry. Now I'm pulling out the Hear the Invitations background stamp. This is a hymnal stamp, inking it up with some antique linen distress ink and just kind of stamping that here and there. Ultimately, you don't really see this texture in the final, page, but it's just part of the background process. I find the more and more layers I do, the better I like the background. It just has a lot more interest. So there you go. You can see it definitely bled through. I don't mind that. I can always cover this up at a later time, incorporate that into another page. If that bothers you, again, you're going to want to prep your page either with like a toothy gesso, not a matte gel medium, because those inks will never dry. I prefer a watercolor ground as my prep if I'm going to be using distressed products. So here is that panel that I had stamped in my unboxing video, and I'm using my decal trimmer to decal the edges. I have found with this trimmer, it works a little bit better if you go slow when you're cutting it, and it just gives you this rough looking edge. You could tear it also. And then I'm going to ink it up with some Brushed Corduroy Distress Oxide ink. The only reason I'm using oxide is because I didn't have a blending foam put underneath my ink pad version yet because it's newer. So this was just a laziness factor. Either way, I'm just kind of trying to get everything to be cohesive and similar tones of brown. I'm going to ink up the edges. That looks like that might be, what is that, vintage photo? I don't know, guys. A darker brown ink pad on the edges. And then I'm squirting a little bit of water in my hand and then letting those droplets fall onto this paper. And you'll see it does obliterate that stamped image. This is the stamp that comes with the kit. And it's already kind of, you know, grungy and messy and difficult to read anyway. So this is just a layering piece here. And I love how it really pulled out those purples. I don't know, and just added a little something to that page. And then I'm just inking up the edges of all of my other pieces with that Brushed Corduroy Distress Oxide ink. I did also round the corners of that journaling card, but now everything kind of fits together. Moving on to this label piece, I'd already cut this out of some mixed media paper, and I am inking it up, or spraying it, I should say, with antique linen and Brushed Corduroy Distress spray stains. So I'm not wanting anything white on this layout. Everything I want it to look like it's vintage, grungy. So we're just dirtying everything at this point. I'm not going to waste that ink. I added a little bit more water to it and then sprayed some water on another piece of this mixed media paper. This is the one from scrapbook.com that I'm really enjoying. And I just kind of dipped it around in that ink. Again, we don't want white. So we're going to stamp on this here in a few minutes. So I'm just kind of prepping it while I already have ink on that media mat that I'm working on. That way it's not wasted. And then we are going to add some brown droplets with my pipette technique that I have been loving. I will say this kind of pulled in some of the purples because the water had touched the purples, but I like how that came out. It looks like the coffee stains kind of dripped over the top of that page. So these die cuts are from the kit. I did go ahead and fussy cut them down closer to the images, and I'm inking them up with some, I'm assuming, Brushed Corduroy Distress ink and a makeup brush. This is just really quick and easy for adding some color to those die cuts and making it so they're not, you know, stark white. So we're going to go back to working on this little label piece. I am going to do some heat embossing. So I'm going to prep it with my anti-static tool. And then I'm going to stamp one of these phrases, Christ is necessary, using some Seedless Preserves Distress Oxide ink. Typically you can emboss with Distress Oxide ink because it stays wet a little bit longer. So you'll see I'll pour some Seedless Preserves embossing glaze over the top of this, but it doesn't fully stick because it's like 84 degrees in my house right now. And so it's just hot and dry, and it just dried before I could get a chance to add that, but it's okay. So I heat set that embossing powder. Moving on to some more stamping. This is using the postage stamps stamp set. I picked out a couple of those. We are going to do a little bit more embossing. So I'm going to prep that panel. We're going to ink this up with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This ink does stay wet long enough for me to add some clear embossing powder. I'm doing this so that when I color in this image, the black stays super intense black because now it's been covered in that clear embossing powder. And there's a variety of different ways that you can color these in. Markers, watercolor, distress crayon. I mean, they're anything that you want. You could color these in at this point. I'm not quite 100% sold on how I was going to color them in, so that's why I was embossing it, but I'm glad I did because I decided on using the Distress watercolor pencils. These are water activated, so you can add water to them and turn them into like a watercolor basically, but I'm just using them dry. So I'm just going in dry, and because I'm doing that and because it's embossed, I don't have to worry about that black staying intensely black because it's protected with that embossing. And so normally these little, they're pigment, would kind of muddy and dull down the black stamping, but it won't do that because it's embossed. So I'm just going in and picking out the colors that were suggested by ByTheWell4God. Again, you can find those on their Instagram. You can find those in my What's in My Cart video. It's a whole bunch of purples, some forest moss, peeled paint. You get the picture. Because I'm working on that brown background, everything's going to be kind of slightly shifted to that yellowy brown color. So use what you have. If you do not have all the colors, use whatever you have that's closest to the color matches for the kit. So I colored both of those in. Really love how those turned out. These stamps are beautiful. I love the detail of those florals. And I'm going to use some pinking shears to cut them out. That way I get that fun, kind of postage stamp edge to it without having to go in and like fussy cut around the stamped edge. Because if you're new here, I hate fussy cutting. It's my least favorite thing. So anything to make cutting easier, I'm going to do it. So this got the job done. So now I've kind of staged everything. You can see I pulled in those gold die cuts that I had cut out towards the beginning of the month, just with some gold cardstock. And then I'm going to get everything glued down here. This little card with it's kind of smushed in the center there. It looks like it has little strawberries on the left-hand side. I'm going to pick it up here in a second. Right there. That card is a Tim Holtz journal card. So I'm super stoked to finally be using some of those, get those incorporated. And then this piece here, you can see I'm actually trying to be strategic about how I place this floral cluster so that the purple floral in the top right-hand corner of the verse card seamlessly blends into the purple flower on that die cut. And that way it just kind of all flows together. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of sprinkles in the background, splatters everywhere, lots of color, lots of florals. Those florals are beautiful, but they are on the busier side. So I'm just trying to, keep it fun and interesting, but not like just clashing amounts of texture. I think I achieved it. I don't know. You tell me. Mixed media is just one of those things. Sometimes you go over the line. Sometimes you don't go far enough with stuff. It's just kind of a process. And it's that process that I thoroughly enjoy. This whole time I'm reflecting on the study, the passage, praying about it, the prayer that I'm going to journal down. All of those are things that are going through my mind as I am kind of positioning all of this and getting it to where it needs to be and working on the different layers and distressing and all of that goodness. So I'm just kind of cutting down these die cuts, filling out these florals, just trying to keep everything kind of balanced and flowing, kind of how I like. I don't know. Everybody has a different eye, I feel like. I see like shapes when I'm creating, and so I'm trying to balance shapes and movement. I don't know. I can't explain my brain. You get that little label down there, Christ is necessary. And that's basically going to be it for that left-hand side. So we can move on to the tag. So I'm plopping out some of the watercolor onto this mat. And then I'm going to spritz this tag with some water and then spritz it with some antique linen distress spray stain just to give some color and instant texture to, there's texture from the texture paste, but color texture onto that tag. You'll see it kind of, sits in the grooves and around that texture paste in different ways. And while it's still wet, I'm going to go in and start dropping in colors of watercolor or bits of watercolor. That is a UPS delivery that is making Mabel bark. So let's just pretend that's not happening because I don't want to redo this voiceover because I do not feel good, friends. Do not feel good. Kidney infections are not fun at all. So I'm lazy because I'm not feeling good. So I'm just now at this point picking up color directly from the watercolor card and dropping it in. I'm not being particular. I'm just kind of plopping it plopping it into different areas on that tag. Made sure that was good and dry, and then it's just way too light at this point. It needs to match the feel of what's going on the left-hand side. So I'm starting in by inking it up with some Brush Corduroy Distress ink and my makeup brush. I'm using the makeup brush because it can get down into all the little grooves of the texture paste. So we're gonna really, really ink that up, and I'm kind of struggling because I can tell it's not getting to the color depth that I want. It's not looking how I want. So sometimes you just have to stick with it. You just got to keep going. I am not happy with it at this point. So we're going to go in with some walnut stain, which typically is the darkest I'll go with my browns when I'm using brown, for distressing and stuff. So doing the same thing, just kind of being more heavy on the edges, but it's still not quite the depth that I want. You can see I keep putting it up against that page to see how it looks. I'm bringing in the elements to see how it looks, and it's not right. So I spray a little bit of water on there just to add some droplet texture. And this was really fun because then now I'm going in with ground espresso. We are breaking out the big guns. Honestly, I could have gone in with scorched timber probably, but we're going in with some ground espresso, and now this is really getting to the color that I want. And it's really sitting and grabbing a hold of where those droplet spots are. And so it's giving even more kind of texture and interest. So don't be afraid to put ink over the top of your water splotches. If the water splotches are too bright, because sometimes, it's pulling the ink away, try putting some ink over it. And it's really cool, the layers that you get. So I'm sticking with that ground espresso, inking up the edge of this other little postage stamp. And then there's this little picture card. I'm going to decal the edges of this also. There's printed decal edges on it. I'm just cutting off that outer border. And we're going to ink that up with that ground espresso as well. As you can see, I do have a blending foam for that color, so we are going to use that. So now it's starting to look like it kind of goes with what's happening on that main panel. It kind of matches a little bit better. When you're gluing over the top of texture paste, you are going to want to use a really strong liquid adhesive. Barely Arts is my go-to for everything. That is going to help it stick to that texture paste. You could even go as far as matte gel medium to get it to stick. I don't realize I've actually forgotten some of the pieces I want to put on that tag, so you'll see me struggle with that here in a second. But I'm moving on to some of the fabric that you could get that coordinates with this release. Cut off a little piece, and I actually cut that piece in half lengthwise, so it's narrower. And we're going to tint it because it's got a white background. So I sprayed it with some water, sprayed it with some antique linen and Brush Corduroy Distress Spray Stain, and we are going to grunge up this ribbon. So it does definitely change the color of the florals and things you'll see in the end shots, but at least now it kind of fits in with everything. So here's where I realize I forgot all of these pieces that I wanted to put on here. And that liquid glue is no joke. It is stuck down on that tag. So I'm having to kind of carefully rip things up, shove stuff into place, tuck glue in there. But we get it. We get it all glued together in the end. I'm just trying to have elements incorporated from the left-hand side onto this tag. So I'm using some Seedless Preserves Distress Oxide Spray, and I actually added water to it before I splattered it onto the card. That's going to activate that oxide aspect of the spray so that it matches the oxide from the left-hand side, that large stamped brown piece. So now you can see where my brain was. It kind of matches what's on the left-hand side, right? Stapled that fabric on there, and that is going to be my tag. I will journal out my prayer off camera on the back of there. And then here is a look at that finished page. I love all the texture in the background, all those inky splotches. I don't even care that it bleeds through. It does a little bit, a lot of it. I don't know. Some people are bothered by that. It doesn't bother me. It's a good start to that next page when I get to it. So that is going to be it for the entry. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below. Check out the description box for links to everything that I used or mentioned. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, if it was inspiring or helpful. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.